The most pervasive environmental toxins is man-made electromagnetic fields. This has been really an ongoing debate for decades. People have, controversially stated, studied, researched, and brought to the public awareness, or tried to, and been suppressed, electromagnetic fields from technology, whether it being in the radio frequency range, the power frequency range, has a negative impact on our health, on biology. iPhones, from what I've measured, are right around 400 hertz, so they're flickering 400 times a second, basically like turning on and off almost 400 times a second. Side effects of flickering LEDs and light is like eye strain, headaches, migraines, epileptic episodes, of course, aggravates symptoms of autism, because the fact is that blue light disrupts melatonin production around like 3 to 4 times compared to lower energy wavelengths such as red light. The problem is there's no such thing that exists in nature as like an isolated wavelength. Blue light is not bad on its own, it's bad when it's by itself.
Thank you for being on, Tristan. And the first thing I kind of want to start to lay out is where we find ourselves today in regards to, blue light, EMF, things like that. These are things that if I tell, any normal person on the street, even the clients that I see on a day-to-day basis, it's kind of something that's invisible, especially EMFs or blue light. All these things are really embedded in our lifestyles now. And it's a pervasive problem that is literally invisible. Could you lay out a little bit of that problem we're having?
Yeah, well, where to start? I mean, it's definitely the most, in my opinion, the most pervasive environmental toxins in our modern world is man-made electromagnetic fields. And that includes, both the artificial blue light, the visible component, and then, as you mentioned, the invisible electromagnetic spectrum that's artificial, that's man-made, that we can't see. And it's really accelerating because of the advent of modern technology, mobile technology, and also because of just how quickly these have become a mainstay in our lives. A drastic increase in how much time we're spending on it has really completely changed our electromagnetic environment. And it's really hard for people to conceptualize this because, for starters, we can't see it. We can't tangibly grasp it. Like food being toxic. Like you go to McDonald's or you eat some, any Cheez-Its or some seed oil laden food or Twinkies. Like you don't really feel good afterwards. And your stomach can get upset, or you can get a sugar rush and then crash. You kind of have more of a tangible feeling. Where the electromagnetic inputs and outputs of our biology, there's certainly a lot more subtle. And it's because we're being exposed to these inputs all the time. And that's where people can't wrap their head around how important this is. And I always mention that, maybe you eat 2, 3, 4 times a day. You drink water, 8, 12 times a day. Yes, you're breathing air all the time, and that's super important. But you're also consuming an electromagnetic input 24/7, 365 days a year, like all the time. It's never stopping. And even when all the lights are off and at night, and even if you blocked out everything artificial, there is a native electromagnetic environment that we're also meant to be consuming all the time. So that's kind of the scene that we're in, but we have a medical system that doesn't learn anything about physics, that doesn't learn anything about electromagnetism, when really the entirety of biochemistry is based on electron transfer and, bonding and all these things. Yeah. It's really rooted in electromagnetism and physics at the lowest level. So it would make sense that we, might want to understand this deeper and think about our electromagnetic environment. So I always start this by trying to convince people that first, you need to understand that we've drastically changed our electromagnetic environment. Then you also need to understand that we're electromagnetic beings, and this is drastically, important. And I always give examples like, what do we use to measure our heart activity or brain activity? It's electrocardiograms, electroencephalograms. We use MRI machines, which are magnetic resonance imaging. And it uses a magnetic field and a radio frequency to pulse water molecules and protons in our body to see abnormalities in tumors and torn ACLs. So we are accepting the fact that electromagnetic aspects of our biology and health are present because we use them every day in diagnostics and imaging. But for some reason, we can't conceive that, being exposed to this very vast swath of man-made electromagnetic fields could potentially have a biological effect.
Yeah.
So for me, it's just trying to break down all these conceptual norms and what people have been taught. And, as an electrical engineer, I never thought my degree and background would be really pertinent and helpful to understanding optimal health. But it's actually, in my opinion, one of the most valuable undergraduate degrees you could probably get. And luckily, I didn't go deep into the design side to where I think I know so much to where most electrical engineers, 99%, would just be like, oh, non-ionizing radiation has no effect on biology or humans. That's known, that's proven. So it's like unquestionable norms and standards. And then it's crazy when you start to uncover just how much research and that this has been really an ongoing debate for decades. It's nothing new that people have, controversially stated, studied, researched, and brought to the public awareness, or tried to, and been suppressed, that electromagnetic fields from technology, whether it being in the radio frequency range, the power frequency range, or anything kind of in between, has a negative impact on our health, on biology. And yeah, there's thousands and thousands of studies. So I always point to like databases there and tell people, yeah, are these studies perfect? No. A lot of them are on, rats and rodents, and maybe they're epidemiological correlative studies. But when you have such an overwhelming body of evidence, and then an industry that's muddying the water with funding their own studies, and also just lack of research before you roll out new technology generations, it seems like, well, if we start to question the food system and government and all these things and vaccines, why would we think big tech, big telecom, and academia is any different in terms of this electromagnetic footprint and effect? So it's a lot. And I think the hardest part, even if you just are like on board with everything I've said, is that it's so inconvenient and it's unavoidable, and it's very stressful to think about that you're getting assaulted with, artificial electromagnetic fields all the time. You can't do much about a lot of it. And, you have to use your phone, you have to use your computer.
And just to be clear, it's coming from phones, it's coming from cell towers, radio frequencies. I would assume satellites as well.
There's so many different examples. So, FM, AM radio, that's an example. Those are two different frequencies. Like FM radio is 100 megahertz. And that's a good example because that is actually a real problem. And they have I think they changed the safety thresholds specifically for FM radio to be more stringent, because FM radio, 100 megahertz, has a wavelength equivalent to around 6 feet, which is around the average height of a human being, right? And then you get into like resonance effects, and they found that you can have a greater effect on, humans because of that resonance wavelength of FM radio, 100 megahertz waves. Whereas, so that's 100 megahertz is 100 million wave oscillations per second. Our cell phones, 3G is mostly operating, 900 megahertz to, 1.5 gigahertz. And then with 4G, 5G, we're climbing up into like 2 to 3 gigahertz, even 5 gigahertz, and 5G millimeter waves are up to like 30, 40 gigahertz. And we're talking gigahertz, meaning billions of wave cycles per second. And the higher frequency you go, the higher energy you go as well. And then, a microwave oven is the same frequency as Bluetooth, which is the same frequency as most Wi-Fi, which is 2.4. So there's such a large range. I mean, everything from, airport communication towers. The military has, a giant slice of these pods. It's basically you take a giant strip of frequencies, and they've been cut up into all these different segments of what they're used for. Everything from in the thousands of hertz range up to billions and gigahertz range. And that's why we keep having to push higher and higher, is because everything's already been taken.
Oh,
And
that's why.
they now are trying to get like higher data throughput, higher frequency. But yeah, you can get a lot of interference. And that's why cell companies, they all have their own little sliver. Like Verizon is here, AT&T is here, T-Mobile is here, because they operate in their own band. But it's insane. The radio frequency spectrum itself
Yeah.
is so vast. And yeah, even electronics in your phone, LEDs are switching at different frequencies with flicker and how they're controlled. It's a lot. But
Yeah.
I would say the biggest ones, and the ones that probably people should focus on, are, the cellular data, which is, the cell towers, the 4G, the 5G, and then the Wi-Fi that, we're exposed to pretty much 24/7, 365 days a year if you're like a normal human. And
Like, what kind of problems are there that they may not even know? Like, obviously, if it's invisible, you probably don't even know. You may have a problem.
I would say at a high level, the most common side effects, downstream repercussions, is just higher levels of cellular stress, higher levels of, neurological stress, reproductive issues, cardiovascular issues, overall energy fatigue, dehydration, because it's really inducing mitochondrial dysfunction, which is the crux of biology. It's where energy is produced. It's cellular signaling. It's communication and immune system signaling. But we see the most electromagnetically dense areas of our body, which would be your brain, your heart, your reproductive organs, being affected the most. And the way I like to think about it is, with all these stressors, like you have a flickering blue lit screen, you have, a Wi-Fi signal, you have a cell signal, you have, power frequencies from the electrical power. It's basically just like keeping your nervous system, your brain on edge all the time, because it's constantly trying to compensate and, deal with this, non-native and artificial input. So you're going to be expending a lot more energy. You're going to have chronic fatigue from just dealing with it, and you're going to be, less efficient at producing energy. And your body is just going to be in this sympathetic, heavy state all the time. So you're never going to be able to just like relax and be calm and actually like have systems functioning fully properly when you're in, this soup of electromagnetic, man-made electromagnetic fields.
Seriously, yeah, I feel a lot better. I live here in the city in LA, and I'm here because my family's here. So my grandma, she's 89, and don't tell my family, but I'm her favorite. So I'm like, I'm here waiting it out with her. But I will leave to like the desert, to like Palm Springs or Joshua Tree, and over there is a real dead zone of just everything. There's not even plant life sometimes, minus the the cactus and the Joshua trees out there. But you feel like almost like this quietness. The first time I was out there, I kind of equated that feeling to the lack of noise. But then it was also, I believe, the lack of just EMF pollution from everyone's cell phone in the city, everyone's radios in the city, all the stuff that's going on. And it feels like someone flips a light switch off almost when you actually get out there into a dead zone of, well, maybe not a complete dead zone, but you get like literal, like just, whoa, like a sense of complete relaxation.
We're just so overstimulated from every capacity of the definition of the word, from the content we consume to the light, like on the screens, to the constant just stimulation and stress from, electromagnetic fields, from toxic air, water, food, what have you. Your body's just constantly fighting, and noise is the perfect way to describe it. And in electrical engineering, we have a term called the signal to noise ratio. And that's, the standard for communication, development and design and radio frequency design. And that's really the best way to explain this, is that we have biological chaos, which you could call inflammation, because the signal to noise ratio has never been lower, because we have so much noise on the line and it's completely diluting the signal. So if you and I were in the same room, or let's say, we were out in Palm Springs, right? And we're just having a conversation. You can hear each other really well. Nothing is being misinterpreted, and it's great. Whereas if we were in downtown LA or at a concert or somewhere, there's hundreds of people around, there's so much background noise, you can't really hear what you say. We have to augment our voices. We have to expend more energy, and then we're background filtering, which if you ever go to like a conference or something, that's a task in and of itself. That's what it's like to be in a native electromagnetic environment versus a non-native electromagnetic environment. And that signal to noise ratio has never been lower. And most people don't know what that actually feels like. They have never really experienced what it's like to be quiet from, a physical perspective, and then also an electromagnetic perspective. And the signal that we really need is the native EMFs that we were designed to take as input signals, which is the solar spectrum and the Earth's natural geomagnetic field, electric field, Schumann's resonance, etc.
Yeah. With all this, I love that you are working with the daylight computer. Could you give a little explanation of what the daylight computer is?
Yeah, so I'm very fortunate to be working on something that is really like a real world solution, because the easy thing here is to freak out and be like, well, I need to move to the woods, or there's not even a point, because we use these devices all the time and there's no changing anything, and big tech companies have a monopoly, and pretty much everything that I just said is true. And I never thought that.
And it's overwhelming too. Like, even
It's very overwhelming. But the good thing is we are building solutions, and that's what we're doing at Daylight. And then you can also reduce your exposure drastically by just how you interface with technology. And we can talk more about that. But at Daylight, we agree that really tech is toxic. It's, super useful. You can be super productive in terms of what you can learn. We have the universe's knowledge at our fingertips, but for some reason, everyone finds themselves scrolling on TikTok and Instagram. So we have this dilemma, right? We have all of this information. We could learn anything. We could become anything, but we're so distracted. We're so overstimulated, and we're spending so much time on our screens without really being productive. And instead of augmenting human experience, it's kind of like flatlining human experience in terms of the trajectory of where big tech companies are spending their innovation dollars, because their money is being spent on keeping you on screen longer and giving you more stimulation, more bright colors, more short form content. And it's both a combination of the hardware and the software. It's not just the content, it is both the hardware interface and the software. So our mission is really to completely, upend that and take computers to being back what they're designed for. And really that's a bicycle for the mind, or just to augment human productivity, output, and capability at the highest level without any of the detractions and the detriments. So yeah, we invented a new display technology. So it's similar to a Kindle in terms of it's an electronic paper type screen that has no color, but it also can be used outside in the direct sun. One of the main detriments of modern technology is that it just keeps us inside.
You can't even use the phone sometimes, outdoors. Like, I want to listen to a podcast or read a little bit outdoors and get some sun. Fucking phone is completely useless for that.
And it's because it's not designed for that. It's designed to
be indoors,
to compete with the sun and look really good in an indoor environment.
Yeah.
And whether that's done on purpose or just a byproduct of product evolution, it doesn't matter. What matters is that technology is keeping us indoors. We spend 80 to 90% of our time indoors. I mean, I'm sure you don't. I know I don't, but most people are. Most people don't have the luxury, and they're working in offices and cubicles under artificial light, high EMF environments. And that disconnection from nature, from what I like to call the real world, is the reason for chronic disease, because our biology has been fine-tuned over hundreds of thousands of years as humans and millions of years as all biological mammalian life. And now we have this situation where the past 150 years, we've increasingly become more and more disconnected from nature, from the real world, from where our biology is designed to take input signals electromagnetically and biochemically. And most of that recently is because of our technology. You can't see your screen outside. You have to bring your charging cable everywhere because your laptop lasts like 2 hours. It overheats really easily. It's just not designed to be used outdoors. So with our display technology, like I said, it's similar to a Kindle, and where it's reflective. You can use it out in the direct sun. You can actually see it better. It doesn't overheat. It doesn't, it could go days on battery because it's emitting no light. It has a reflective screen. So it's working with nature instead of against it and trying to compete with it. And then when there is no, direct sunlight or a lot of ambient light at nighttime, we custom made a backlight to have zero blue light option as well. So you're getting more of like a candlelight spectrum as opposed to a very isolated, highly blue lit screen. And we also removed the flickering component because people don't realize that all LEDs are designed electronically to pulse or to flicker.
Yeah.
And
What is that, by the way? What
major
is?
stressor. It's called pulse width modulation, and it's just standard electronic control of LED drivers. It's a very efficient way to control brightness and change brightness, but it's unintended tragedy of really just stressing out our eyes and our brains. And you can go look up like IEEE, like electronic and electrical engineering code, and it'll just tell you as facts. Side effects of flickering LEDs and light is like eye strain, headaches, migraines, epileptic episodes, of course, aggravates symptoms of autism because it's very overstimulating.
Oh, right.
And
Yeah.
nobody is talking about this. And all LEDs, even the LEDs like in lights, just indoor lighting, it's the same thing. Fluorescent lights also flicker for a different reason, but that's an underrated one. And all we did was say, hey, flicker is a problem. Why don't we go and change the circuitry design to be direct current and not flicker? And that's what we did. And that's what's cool about all of this is once you acknowledge there's a problem, you can design and engineer and build a solution. Of course, if you have the resources, it's not that hard to figure this stuff out. It's one, acknowledging the problem exists, and then two, executing on it, of course, with the resources. So that's what's so cool about Daylight is we have this very unique opportunity where we outline all the reasons why technology is detrimental for humans and not augmenting, our experience to the highest level it could be. And the real, low-hanging fruit and main place to start is the screen and the light. But, we can take that to the next level with, RF, EMFs. And what does that look like to try and make the lowest EMF phone or tablet in the future? It's an engineering challenge, but if we acknowledge that that's a problem, we could definitely make it a lot better. Will it ever be perfect? Probably not, but that's the sort of thinking and, understanding of what it takes to solve problems that exist to make it happen. And that's what's like the most exciting part is we're just kind of really just getting started on it.
Hell yeah. Love it. The flicker, let's really quickly, even though our naked eye can't see it, it's still an issue.
It's even more of an issue when you're in this, like, it's like a bad Goldilocks zone of right above, I think 60 to 90, flicker or oscillations per second hertz is where you can't visually perceive it anymore. So people might be like, oh, a candle or a fire is flickering. Yeah, that's like super low frequency. So it's not a problem for our brain really. But when you get right above the visual perception level of like 100 hertz, 200 hertz, 400 hertz, it's really problematic. And iPhones, from what I've measured, are right around 400 hertz. So they're flickering 400 times a second, basically like turning on and off almost 400 times a second. And if you take a slow motion camera, and you can look up YouTube videos, you'll see this. You'll see it with fluorescence, LEDs. It's crazy. And you wonder why after a day's, staring at your screen, you just feel so drained, right? And now we literally have to consume so many stimulants just to make it through the day. And it's because we're just being assaulted by so many unnatural experiences directly on our eyes, on our brains. And, we get to the end of the day and we're just toasted. And it doesn't need to be like that. But yeah, if you keep going to a high enough flicker rate, like, tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands, eventually it'll be so fast that it's basically like it's on all the time. So there is like this, like kind of negative Goldilocks zone right above visual perception. That's a huge problem.
That's pretty trippy, man. I've worked with cameras a lot, so I remember hitting slow-mo on screens and being like, whoa, and like the light just tripping out. A lot of overhead lights, like the fluorescent lights have that too. That's nasty. That lighting is already trash, so that's rough. I wanted to ask you about because I know you guys have a good CPU and RAM on that thing, right?
I mean, it's good. It's not amazing. It's not an Apple product. It's good enough to do, email and social media. So the cool thing about our display is I compare it to a Kindle, right? Maybe what a Remarkable tablet is.
Yeah.
These are all like electronic ink or e-ink type screens, and they're great. This is the inspiration for our product. But the problem is the refresh rate of those screens is too low. It's too slow to really do anything besides read, take notes, maybe zoom in pretty poorly on a PDF. And that's why they're super laggy. They ghost, and they've only been e-readers, not,
Computers.
computers. Yeah. So what we did was we took that inspiration and, wanted to get a refresh rate fast enough on an e-paper screen so it could be used for a full computer functionality. And that's what we did. So you can get an amazing reading, note-taking experience on a daylight computer, but you can also go on social media. You can send emails. You can go on an internet browser. You can do anything. And again, the CPU, the RAM, it's solid, but it is a tablet, so it's not like it's not a laptop processor, but it's good enough, and it allowed us as a startup to financially do this. Else, we could have spent way too much money on some crazy processor, some crazy RAM or memory, and maybe not made it. So we had to be very careful, and it's the whole thing is it's solid, it's good enough for kind of what you need it to be used for. And yeah, I use it every day. It's amazing, and I think it's something that we're at product one, so it's only going to get better.
No, it's fucking awesome. That thing looks super sick. And I think it also has Google Play, right? It's attached to the Google App Store.
The cool part about this whole thing is when you control the entire computer stack, you can really innovate on all levels. So the display is the real innovation right now. It's hardware, the way you interact with it. But because we built our fully owned tablet, we can also innovate, and we're going to, and we are, on the software side. So again, I mentioned before, it's both a hardware and a software problem that tech is so toxic and addicting and overstimulating. And we want to address it all. We want to address the whole stack and make it, optimized for wellness and productivity. So right now we have a modified Android operating system. So you can download any Google Play Store app, and any app really, pretty much, unless it's iOS exclusive. And
Right.
Of course you can't have like iMessage and stuff, but you can have WhatsApp, Slack, email, Gmail, Google Docs, all that stuff, Sheets. It's great. But we want to take that, and then we're going to launch early next year SolOS, which is our version of our custom operating system that's going to, start still on top of Android and as Android, but have our own custom workflows, our own, custom launcher and reader app, and, some AI integrations, because we do think there's a lot of benefit from the technology that exists. But what if we use it in a way to where, it keeps you from having to toggle between all these tabs and switch between all these apps, and the answers are just right there, and you can totally just drop in and work in deep focus. So that's the vision, where it's only going to, be iterated on throughout 2025 and onwards.
Dude, I'm excited to see those. Could you put some Bitcoin on that thing?
Yeah, the other thing is we're pretty much all, Bitcoiners in the leadership team. And again, what are all the problems with tech, right? So it's bad for your health, which is attacking your physical sovereignty. It's really capturing your attention and your thoughts, and we live in an attention-based economy. So it's capturing your cognitive sovereignty, and that at a privacy level and your data, it's also capturing completely your individual sovereignty. So you're pretty much robbed on every level. So for us, we're addressing the physical and then dipping into the cognitive sovereignty angle. But as we build our own operating system, we can really innovate in terms of privacy and security. We can integrate some of these really cool sovereign software protocols that have come out of Bitcoin and crypto. And, there's so much budding there that's really exciting. But yeah, we can basically build a decentralized OS and have all these primitives integrated directly in. So you don't have to buy like a de-Googled phone, or you don't have to install, sideload some OS, which are, again, these are all great options. But what if you could just buy one device that, blocks the blue light? You don't have to wear blue light blockers or have an annoying screen filter. It's basically de-Googled. It's not stealing your data, and, it's more private and secure. So that's the whole vision, is to just have the whole thing on one device, and the company behind that.
Hell yeah. Does the daylight have a camera on it by chance?
Does not right now. And, first product being a tablet. No one takes pictures with a tablet,
Yeah.
But I would say I would love, and definitely going to push hard on the V2 to have a front-facing camera for video calls.
That'd be sick.
Yeah, just front-facing camera. It doesn't even have to be, super high quality, of course, because, for meetings, it doesn't really matter. But to me, that's something that's, a no-brainer to add in the future. But right now, some people like the fact that we don't have a camera either on the privacy front, which is...
Oh yeah, that's true. I just got a new laptop and it has like the perfect little slide that's attached to it, which is nice. I love that. I wanted to ask, when I first started getting into all this, it was through Dr. Jack Cruz, and then boy, I just went down the very, very deep wormhole and rabbit hole this whole thing is, and it's fucking awesome. And I started to, use a lot more red light. Like in my whole house, I mainly just have red lights. If there's a light bulb, it has a red light in it. If not during the day, the lights are off, and I just got all the windows open. Is there a reason why the amber light versus a red light? Is amber light better? Is pure red light, maybe I'm messing up and then using too much red?
This is a great question, and one I've probably evolved my thinking on a lot. And I would say that, well, let me tell you the facts first. The facts is that blue light disrupts melatonin production around like 3 to 4 times compared to lower energy wavelengths, such as red light. And orange light. But the problem is there's no such thing that exists in nature as like an isolated wavelength, right? You never get just red light in nature.
Right.
What do we have in nature that is low stimulation? We use that nighttime for millions or thousands of years. It's fire. And if you look at the spectrum of fire, it has sometimes even like a very, very tiny bit of blue, a tiny bit more green, very small amount, more yellow, more orange, more red, more infrared, like a ton of infrared. And that's actually pretty much the same spectrum of incandescent lighting, because the incandescent lights, they use a tungsten filament that glows like it's 3 times hotter than steel, like molten, steel, which is insane. And we use this across the 20th century, right? That was the predominant form of lighting until the back half of the 20th century, because incandescents were deemed energy inefficient, because that infrared light that it's getting off is heat. And that's why, they get really hot if you grab them and touch them. But that heat is infrared light. And that's what's missing from the sun when we're indoors just being exposed to LEDs, because LEDs have no infrared. And that's one of the problems with them. Blue light is not bad on its own. It's bad when it's by itself. Blue light is, and that's confusing, but it's like blue light is in the sun. I got so much blue light today outside, but guess what? Blue light never comes without the red, and more importantly, the infrared. And sunlight is 50 to 55% like red and infrared, mostly infrared. And that is something that a standard red LED bulb will not have. It will not have any infrared, and those LEDs are also flickering. Whereas like incandescent lights are analog. They'll flicker at the 60 hertz rate of the power outlet, but that's far better. Has a way lower flicker index, and it's not really a result of the bulb itself, but the power, the electrical power that we have in this world. So I've changed my tune completely, and I pretty much, I mean, I have like a incandescent, a 250 watt incandescent right here next to me. That's what's shining on my face.
Hell yeah.
So it's not a red LED. It's giving me everything from red and infrared onwards. So we're talking, hundreds and hundreds of wavelengths. So for us at daylight, our amber spectrum, we decided to do amber for many reasons. Again, we trying to emulate nature to the highest degree. So what exists in nature is fire, candles. And if you look at our spectrum, the first half of our spectrum is exactly the same as like a candle. And then we don't have the infrared component to it. However, that's something, we're going to evolve and work on, is even getting some infrared LEDs to try and match a candle, at least, the front portion of it.
Really?
Yeah,
you could add that.
Yeah, you can get infrared LEDs for sure.
And then it'll start giving off a little bit of heat, the daylight.
I don't think it would really. So most of the heat on the infrared component is coming more from like the mid and far range, like further wavelengths, like past 1,000 nanometers, like 1,200 nanometers. I mean, maybe that's what we need to play around with, But the near infrared, like 780 and kind of like maybe even 1050, there will be some heat, but not nearly as high as like further wavelengths. So something for us to play around with, right? And if you look at the spectrum on our backlight, we have a little bit of green, more yellow, a ton of orange and amber, and then a good amount of red. And that's a broad spectrum light. Whereas if you filter your iPhone screen and go to full red mode, you're getting like a tiny spike and whatever, 650 nanometers, let's say. And that's, cool because there's no blue light. But the problem is, I mean, I can ask you right now, how well can you even see your screen when it's fully red or you're wearing dark red blue light blockers? You can't. So you end up having to turn the brightness up. And it is both a combination of light, spectrum, wavelength, and then brightness, power density, total photon density that is disrupting melatonin in your circadian rhythm. So and the reason that is because our eyes are, the rods in our eyes at nighttime, they're far less sensitive to red light than they are to higher energy wavelengths. So if you add in a tiny bit of green and some yellow, you can see it really well. That's why, I don't know, if you've been in like full red LED mode and then you light a candle, you're actually be like, wow, the candle is so bright. But it's actually not brighter. It's just you have that green and yellow in there, so it's perceived as brighter, even though the photon density at the specific wavelength might,
because you can see more, like the cones could actually pick up more information.
Exactly. So for us, when we sprinkle in a little green and some yellow, again matching the candle, you can see our amber backlight like very well. Just put it on here and you can see it really well. And then the advantage is you can turn it down to like really low brightness. So I just keep turning it down, and let me go up here, and you can still see it like pretty well. Because no one wants to stare at a dark red screen. You literally can't do anything. And
I do it all the time with my phone. Yeah, I know.
All the way up, and you're like, oh, this sucks. So, it's thinking you're going to the extreme when you learn about all this stuff, like no blue, no yellow, no green, no nothing, just red. But in reality, like nature net doesn't work like that. And that's where folks that I respect really, heavily, like Scott Zimmerman, who's an optics engineer, and he has some lighting solutions, has always said this. And he's like, I'm not even really a fan of red light therapy devices because you're getting such a high power density of like 2 3 wavelengths. Whereas I just showed you I had this 250 watt incandescent bulb. It's probably, 1/10 to 1/5 of the power of like, a big red light therapy panel. But for starters, it costs $10. And second, it's giving me every single wavelength in the red and infrared range up to a certain, degree of the infrared. So I'm getting way more light in terms of what the coverage is. And it's balanced. It's spread out. It's not like, this insanely high peak at one power density or one wavelength, which again, from the sun, you're getting everything. You're getting everything from ultraviolet to blue to green to yellow to orange to red to infrared. You're getting it all. So, and same with fire. So, yeah, we're just trying to emulate nature as best we can with the tech we have. And I've completely changed my frame. And I do think incandescents are actually the healthiest, bulbs that you can get, because we're very deficient in infrared light due to our indoor living, the fact that glass is blocking some infrared, and we're, don't have any lights with infrared.
So you're thinking I should change my my LEDs, my red ones?
Especially during the day, having incandescents, or even, you can buy some low power ones for at nighttime, like even that night lights with incandescents. I think they're better, to be honest. And I think they're nicer and warmer. And then,
it's easier to see for sure.
Grandma comes over and she could actually see something. And it's just like maybe a combination of both, right?
Yeah.
There's nothing perfect. You could debate all day about any light is artificial and disrupting to some degree. But if it's a better experience and you're still getting a lot of the benefits, I think incandescence is probably the best bang for your buck there. But I don't even think you can buy them in California, to be honest.
You know how frustrating that is to not be able to buy incandescent light bulbs at the fucking Home Depot or anything. Like,
you can't even buy them on Amazon, man.
You can't even buy them on Amazon in California.
That's insane.
Here's a hack for all my listeners watching. You go on eBay and you can buy them on eBay and you get them delivered to your house. So my grandma, I love my grandma to death, and she had, I don't know who gave her these light bulbs where they're like these really bright LED ones. Like, I could taste the blue coming off the damn light. It was disgusting. So I ordered her some incandescents, and I was like, "You're going back to 1940s where you came from, Grandma." And then she's like, loves them, and it's a lot better. It feels healthier in the room, even.
It's nice, right? Like it's warm.
Is it a fire?
Is it tungsten is like, it's heated up so much that it's basically like a little fire. Yeah,
it's like almost like a candle.
It's a little tungsten fire. Tungsten's crazy element too, but
I love it. Yeah, I got a ring of tungsten on me all the time.
Yeah, nice. There you go.
I had a question. So I got this guy here.
Yes, spectrometer.
Okay. I got a spectrometer here. And I love this thing because, like, even with new technology that I have, or any type of light bulb that I'm looking at, or any room I'm going to spend a lot of time in, like, I do this at work once in a while. I'm like, okay, what lights, if we're changing out lights and stuff. But I always ran into this interesting problem where if I go to, let's say, my little LED screen here, every single screen has like a very strong peak of blue light. Every single screen. Why is it always on this far right side of blue and not even like, a little arch? It's a complete huge spike.
I mean, why that's happening? That's just like the evolution of cool white LEDs screens. And
is it because it's efficient for the technology and longer battery life? Or
the thing with LEDs that people don't understand is that they're very isolated, right? Like, you're getting like plus or minus like 10 to 20 nanometers of wavelength. So they could put in more blue, but if they wanted to put in more blue, like the rest of the blue, it might like distort how the screen looks, or it might not be as optimal. It's all been optimized for visual experience, right? Mm-hmm. And it just so happens that level of intensity of blue and that wavelength is what they like. And again, you would have to put like a bunch of LEDs in there to get a more full spectrum solution. So what's just become standard based on the visual experience and, the right number of LEDs, is that very high peak in the blue, then a bit of a gap, and then some like, portion of the visible in terms of like green, yellow, and orange, and then absolutely no really red and infrared at all.
Yeah, it was just so interesting that like every screen I ever tested, it just has such a high spike in blue, which I hear is also kind of addictive. Does it like trigger dopamine or?
Yeah, yeah. I mean, blue light in general. What is blue light meant to do for us in nature? It is meant to wake us up. It's very stimulating, both from a circadian rhythm perspective, but also from like a dopaminergic perspective, because it's telling us like, hey, man, the sun is up. It's day. Like,
Yeah.
if you think we're a hunter gatherer, like go out there, like get stuff done, like hunt. Here's energy. Here's cortisol. Here's dopamine. Get stuff done, survive, pass on your genes to the next generation. That's like basic human programming. So now that's been hijacked, right? Because we know that blue light acts in this way, as being very stimulating and almost like kind of addicting because of the dopaminergic response to it. And now, we're getting that all the time and at nighttime when we're supposed to be resting. So we have like dull days and bright nights, and it should be the opposite.
It's crazy how backwards things are, man. It's like literally people are not getting any real light during the day, go home, and then all their lights are either blue LEDs from their phone, from their TV, from the overhead lighting. Even having an overhead, like
Yeah, the angle matters. Yeah.
it's crazy. Like I remember before I even knew this, and I was a young guy. I had to be at least like 19, and I was training people. For some reason, I just knew intuitively. I told people like get a lamp, don't have overhead lighting. Like it just relaxes you so much more to have a lamp right next to your bedside where it can't really hit. Now, Dr. Huberman mentioned that there's more light and cone receptors at the bottom of the eyes, so the sun hits these guys here to turn you up and wake you up, whereas it doesn't touch the bottom side. So that was an interesting explanation.
It's really cool to when you frame it in the way that everyone is going through life. They pretty much like wake up and then they're in the same perpetual dull environment all day long, regardless of the time of day, regardless of the sun is up, and then regardless of what time of year it is. We're at the same temperature, we're in the same dull lighting, like all this all the time, all year, all time of day, when nature is so cyclical on a daily basis, a circadian 24-hour basis, and then a seasonal basis. And that's where, all of this really comes crashing down is there's no cyclicality to anyone's lives anymore. And they're getting all of that dopamine and that experience from the artificial world they live in. And then they really go outside and guess what? Everything's gray because they've been so desensitized to that sort of experience on a neurotransmitter level.
Jesus Christ, dude. Yeah, it's sad. I don't know. Just you saying that, like I have certain people that I've crossed paths with in life that like they're almost not living on Earth. Like, they don't even go snowboarding when it's wintertime. Like maybe they spend their whole, year at work, but in the summer they don't go to the beach. In the wintertime, they don't even go to the mountains. During the spring, they don't go to the river. They just stay in the box. It's fucking scary a little bit, it's completely different experience of life.
Yeah. And that's what you kind of see is like, people are just in that crazy, like just states of perpetual dullness, and the life has quite literally been sucked out of them. And it does feel like zombification. Like I do think like NPC is it's a crazy thing. I think so many people, they even lack the consciousness that if we tell them all this information, they're like, oh yeah, wow, like, oh okay, but then there's no deliberate action because they straight up don't have the energy or the dopamine to go and do something about it. And it's really scary. But we also living in a time like this year where there's a lot of promising momentum, which is really cool. And again, no one's going to wear blue light blockers on a large scale. No one's going to do red screens, red LEDs like me and you. We've been doing this for years. We're weird, whatever. We love it. But like a day like computer, we have a chance to bring this stuff to the masses with a very low barrier to entry. Like, hey, just slide this little thing and you get rid of all the blue light and you can actually see it. Oh, that's nice. Oh, yeah, our product goes into airplane mode without you even having to press a button because we care about reducing your radio frequency exposure. Like, or in the future, it'll just be a lot lower radio frequency exposure. So it needs to be low enough to have, in terms of the barrier to entry, to have like a mass scale impact. So
No, and you guys, honestly, the Nook and the Remarkable, those are like, those are proven market space, like people love that. And it's a good thing that yours is mimicking that. Plus, you got all the fucking apps on there. I mean, like, how cool is that?
and we're those products are focused around productivity and deep work, whereas we're focused on that, but on the entire health space, the entire health angle, which, as you know, is one of the fastest growing and highest awareness areas now. And every mom eventually is going to want their kid to have a healthier iPad because they know it's addictive. They don't know why, a lot of them, but they know that it turns their toddler into an absolute demon when they take it away from them. And it doesn't have to be that way, but we're really setting our children up for failure in this next generation because they're quite literally growing up in a completely artificial environment and they're so much more susceptible. So that's where we can embark the biggest change is setting up the next generation for success again.
Dude, I fucking love it. I think we're coming up right up on time here. I have just a few more just quick shot questions for you, bro. When we talk about, grounding and stuff and, EMFs, typically what I've understood is once we're grounded, the EMFs are a little less of an issue because our bodies are actually connected to the earth, which gives us, it's not like a shield, or does it deflect, or how does that work?
Yeah, so this is like, I would say, the number one biggest misconception of like grounding and EMF mitigation. The reason why this is a thing is because if you measure your body voltage, so body voltage is a measurement of AC electric fields being induced on your body. And this is a phenomenon when you have two, conductive surfaces or mediums. And when you're in an electric field, via capacitive coupling, you can, quite literally induce a voltage on your body. So if I, measured you right now in your room, you might have like 1 volt of AC voltage like on your body. And when you ground that, just like any grounded, scenario with an electric field, that measurement goes to 0. But does that mean the field is gone? No, it just means that you are now the circuit and you are now grounding that voltage through your body. So I would say that grounding is not directly mitigating any EMFs. And if you are in an extremely high EMF environment, you could argue that it might even be worse for you. I don't know. This is the area of like research that we really have no idea about because even the research on grounding is so primitive. It's so early. It's obviously a benefit because, I can directly with a multimeter prove like electron flow and all these things. And it's, basic physics to understand. People like, Richard Feynman talked about grounding and that, electric fields of the earth, like in the 60s, who's a Nobel Prize winner. But the notion that it could potentially be protecting you or shielding you is definitely not true. What it does is it also provides your body a source of free electrons, and those electrons work as antioxidants, which can combat the oxidative stress from the high EMF environment that you're in. So it's like an indirect benefit of grounding, which you can get all the time. But that's why, people ask me, Tristan, can I ground into my electrical outlet, in my room, and then I'm good with the Wi-Fi and all this stuff. I'm like, I have heard stories that has made things drastically worse because one, you're grounding into an electrical outlet, which I don't trust any electrical wiring of any place in the United States, and floating neutrals. You might be picking up dirty electricity. You might not, but you're grounding into a 60 hertz circuit. So you're kind of playing with fire. And then simultaneously, if you have like 3 volts of AC voltage on your body and you're just grounding that, it could potentially make things worse. So that's the area where, I try to just use as much common sense and logical thinking based on my knowledge set, but we really need a lot of research to kind of uncover what is the truth, what happens, when these things are induced on our body, in terms of voltage and current, and when we do ground them, like, where do they go? How do they transfer through
What do they
ground? Like, how does that work? We have like this whole, water extracellular matrix in our body, but science doesn't even acknowledge that that's real or that's important. But yeah, we're just out here kind of having our best guess.
So it can make it worse?
Potentially, I don't know.
Really?
And here's my number one recommendation is, yes, ground, get your feet on the earth as much as you can, wherever you can. But in like a bedroom type scenario, don't just think that grounding is going to solve all your problems. Always mitigate EMFs first. And in the bedroom, your sleep sanctuary is so important because that is when you don't need technology on. And that is when you're restoring and repairing all the cells, the cellular damage from the day. So I personally have the Wi-Fi off, no phones, no electronics in the bedroom. I even turn my circuit breaker off. I have no power.
Dude, I saw that. That's fucking cool, man. Did you do that yourself?
Oh, yeah, it's literally just a circuit breaker switch. I'm lucky because
In your room?
yeah, or my circuit breaker like panel, yeah.
Mine's outside.
Sometimes, you can't do that. You can buy switches, or you could get your electrician to like custom wire or something. But it's just like thinking about what is the highest ROI in a modern like lifestyle, because we obviously have to use this stuff all day. Most people aren't going to hardwire. Like, I hardwire my internet too when I'm not traveling or not working outside in the park. But it's like, what can I actually achieve that's realistic? And for me, it's, stop holding your tech next to your body, next to your brain, next to your, reproductive organs, on your lap. Use speaker, use headphones, turn the Wi-Fi off at night, give yourself a break at night for once from all these stressors, and, get outside as much as possible in the sun and feet on the ground.
If the laptop has 3 prongs and it has that grounding prong, does that make the laptop grounded?
Potentially. Sometimes ground continuity doesn't really transfer, but yeah, that would improve like electric field exposure. But it's you're still going to be assaulted with like radio frequencies and magnetic fields, so it could be helpful. But yeah, ideally, because when you're charging something, when you're using something, when it's charging with an ungrounded plug, that's like the ultimate exposure. So the 3-prong plug on a charging cable is great because it's like not making it worse when it's charging then, because it's being grounded. However, all of the electronics still in the device itself are you're going to be exposed to.
Cool, man. Dude, thank you so much for working with Daylight, man. I think it's an amazing not only device but like cause. I think children are gonna benefit from this a lot. I've seen it, man. These kids screaming and kicking and glued to the damn iPad anywhere I go. It's literally like a babysitter for some adults. And maybe, the Daylight could be, a babysitter that's a bit better because the other one's abusing them, Where could they find you, my man? And where could they get the Daylight computer?
Yeah, and that's exactly what we hope for, right? So I appreciate you having me on, man. This has, been great. And yeah, you can check out Daylight, daylightcomputer.com. We might be sold out. We're on like pre-orders, but you can always, worst case, place $100 deposit to get like your next spot in line. And, we're catching up on deliveries and shipments. So yeah, the response has been great. So we appreciate tremendously anyone who, provides early support. You can always reach out to us if, you want to work with us closely, or, have any questions at hello@daylightcomputer.com, at Daylight Co on socials. Send us a DM with any questions or comments or suggestions as well. And then, yeah, my personal stuff on Instagram, I'm at Tristan_health. So you can check it out. And yeah, thanks so much for having me on. And it's great talking with you.
Dude, you too, brother. I'm for sure going to get one of these. I just have too much technology already. I need to chill the fuck out. I got too many things, man. I just got this cool little headlamp that's red, so I can read at night. It's like perfect for reading. But cool, bro. Thank you guys so much. Thank you guys for listening, and we'll catch you on another episode. Peace out.